Hello there, it's Silver, and this is Neon Abyss 2. Just like the first game, this is a side-scrolling roguelite set in a neon-soaked, mythically inspired world. The first game had a great sense of style and a pretty good amount of content to go around at the end. This time, though, the sequel is starting its early access campaign with more content than the original had at the end. We don't see that too often. Usually roguelites in early access start out with a mechanical foundation and then pour on the content over the span of many updates towards 1.0. So it's cool to see one coming onto the scene with a very respectable amount of shiny stuff from the start. This game has its mechanics mostly based around the economy of a run. Pretty much everything that can be expressed as a number, keys, bombs, eggs, coins, it's all counted, and there are many items that can be affected by them. You'll find things like an item that causes eggs to hatch faster every time you use a key, or a gun that shoots stronger lasers the more coins you're holding. This means this is an entirely mechanics-focused game. Don't expect an in-depth story or super developed characters here, it's all about the run variety and build complexity. That being said, there's so much content currently available that it still feels like a complete package, just one that's aiming for things other than story. They've also been deploying daily patches for things like balance and bug fixes, which means it already feels quite polished, relatively speaking, just with some more ground to cover over the next several months. This is the kind of sequel that's the same thing as the previous game, but expanded in every direction. A type of sequel made popular by Doom 2. It serves this game very well due to its focus on content. When it comes to how the game looks and sounds, there's already a great audiovisual identity, despite the fact that the game isn't technically finished. Visually, it looks probably like what you'd expect a game called Neon Abyss to look like. Lots of neon everywhere, and somewhat cyberpunk aesthetic built around it. Playable characters all have really sharp outfits that look cool, and NPCs share a very stylized appearance, almost 16-bit, but more advanced than that, and with more detail. The star of the show here, I think, are the levels. They look great, with lots of background detail and a solid atmosphere. The titular abyss, where you'll be doing your runs, looks fantastic for a dungeon. In the chambers where you start on each floor, there are these cool stone statues with neon painted highlights all around them. They look super neat and sort of keep you company since they exist in a safe room. The floors and walls of the abyss are a dingy stone that sometimes has bright accent on it, and some rooms have a different theme, usually with lots of electric signage or bright colors to contrast the dark stone environments. Even though the floors and walls tend towards dirty stone and metal looks, the backgrounds for each room can vary wildly. They usually have one specific color as a theme, and then a bunch of details based around that. You may come into a room with a bunch of green displays in the background showing lines, and then the rest will be like a tech-looking tubes and screens fitting those displays. You can also find, say, a room with a yellow background that's populated entirely with metal framing and industrial-looking pipes. Basically, the backgrounds change around all the time and have a lot of moving and visual details, as well as a single predominant color to fill them out. Enemies look nice, considering how fast many of them can move, and each floor as you go down will have a selection of enemies different from the previous one, but often using a few from it as well. The important thing with enemies is that they be readable and trackable, so you aren't getting hit by things you can't see. I think the game does an admirable job with this, but it still sometimes devolves into fighting things that you keep losing track of. Mostly, the enemy designs stand out against any of the backgrounds, but there are some, often fast-moving flyers, that can be easy to lose in the action, especially when you have lots of Hatchamon fighting with you, which can easily cause some confusion mid-battle. Enemy bullets and attacks are another thing that needs to be clear and obvious, and the game always colors them a neon red to help them stand out. I think this works most of the time, but just as with the enemies, sometimes the action gets so hectic that it can be easy to momentarily lose track of them. This is especially a problem with homing bullets, I've found, where you can dodge them and put them into the back of your mind while dodging other stuff, only to have them loop around and get you in the back in a way you didn't quite expect due to your focus being elsewhere. Overall, I think they do a good job of making enemy attacks visible, but the hectic nature of the neon-streaked battlefield means that some of them can slip by. Boss designs are also very creative. They're various gods of electronic age concepts, and they all look great. The more common bosses can have a cool look, from a snake made of IM symbols slithering around the arena to a god that takes the form of cards from a deck builder, where it's only vulnerable when the card is flipped face up. They're all super colorful and nice to look at, but it's the major bosses where things get really cool. Bosses like Talos and Apollo have unique arenas that look very different from any other room, and excellent designs themed around what they're the god of, complete with lots of moving parts. The attacks that come from these bosses are also creative and unusual, making the fight very different from a minor boss. They also often have interactions with the arena, doing things like firing flames up from a neon dance floor, which pulls together the boss in their room, making all the visuals relevant to fighting them. Visuals relating to your character are also important, so things like item usage and weapon attacks. These look pretty great most of the time, with everything you can do having a stylized and bold look in terms of particle effects and colors. Guns especially tend to look satisfying when fired, with cool projectiles that aren't easy to mistake for enemy shots, importantly. Melee weapons have a bright neon arc in the air and a bit of a screen shake to add that extra impact. I think the Hatchimon can be a problem though. They're all very cute and silly looking, but you have 5 or 6 of them on the fields with you that can make the already hectic arena even harder to read, and you can get even more than that. It's actually somewhat easy to mistake them for an enemy just for a second, or the other way around, causing you to take damage when you thought you were somewhere safe. It gets to be more of a problem when you have evolved Hatchimon, because they're physically larger, meaning they catch your eye easier and can sometimes look like enemies. The music is a definite standout though, with plenty of tracks to switch through while exploring. It's a fittingly electronic and synth-heavy sound, with some other elements mixed in there depending on the track, like trance stuff or even traditional Japanese sounds. The safe zones like the hub area you start in have a strong electronic pulse, like a dance club, but then when you dive down you hit these other types of like EDM influenced stuff, and it underlines all the exploration and combat that you'll be doing. It's a great soundtrack, and it already eclipses the first games with a total of 33 tracks currently. It's one of those where you'll find yourself tapping your foot along with it while the rest of you is lost and trying to survive the boss. If you've played the first Neon Abyss, then this one will be very familiar to you gameplay-wise. It's clearly building on top of the same structure to the point that some people might not feel enough has changed between the two. I personally think that it has changed enough, but even I can admit the similarities. The basics are, you'll choose a character. Each character has a starting weapon, an amount of starting health and resources, and one starting artifact that helps to define their playstyle. And then you'll go to floor 1 of the Abyss. Each floor will consist of many rooms of different kinds that you can explore and unveil one at a time. In lots of these rooms, enemies will spawn and try to eat you, so you gotta eat them first. Combat is mostly about aiming your chosen weapon correctly while running and jumping to dodge bullets and melee attacks coming your way. It uses the 2D platformer view to good effect, so it's really platforming skills that you need to stay alive when there are enemies everywhere. Once you clear a room, a coin will spawn. The value of this coin is based around how quickly you cleared the room, I think. I'm not entirely sure, but it seems to work that way from what I can tell. There are several resources that you gotta worry about. Coins for buying things in the shop and using certain machines, bombs that can blow up stone obstacles and chests, keys for unlocking doors and other chests, and of course, your hearts and armor. Not to mention the crystals you'll sometimes find. You may come across a chest that requires 2 crystals to open, and some doors that cost 3. The shop on each floor will always be behind a 3 crystal door every time. However, there are also items called curios that most characters can hold 1 of. These are active items that cost crystals to use and produce their effect. They can do all sorts of things, from upping your damage for a room, or giving you homing shots for a while, or like a short-range teleport. There are plenty of them. Exploring a floor, you'll be constantly shuffling the crystals you have to get where you want to go, but also saving some for your curio if you have one. There are other room types as well. The shops will always have a weapon and a relic in stock, along with some other things. There'll be a challenge room on every floor that spawns waves of enemies and gets pretty difficult, but rewards you with a special chest if you live. Some floors may also have other special rooms like arcades, basketball or volleyball courts, foreboding places like the clown room or the agony room. Those are real. They'll also have an artifact room. These contain 1 random artifact for free. The room on the first floor will be open every time, but every floor after that, you'll have to unlock it first with a key. Artifacts have a massive pool of possible options, and your run can be significantly affected by which ones you find. It feels a bit like Binding of Isaac in that respect. These are all passive and provide tons of useful benefits, often relating to the resources you have. You may find one that speeds up Hatchimon eggs hatching per room you clear. one that gives you a combat bonus called a Wisp every time you use a gambling machine and fail, or even one that just straight up allows you to fly. You can stack up loads of these and try to create the most overpowered build possible, and these are really where a lot of the variety in runs comes in. At some point, I think each character is going to have an active skill you can use to help make them even more unique. The controls have an option for these skills, but they aren't currently in yet, as far as I can tell, so I assume this will be added over time. A run in this game is basically about balancing, right? You gotta balance your crystals, balance your money, use your bombs well, keep your health and armor up, and also decide for each optional room if it's something you currently feel safe to do. If, for instance, you run into the clown room at half a heart, you might not want to go in. There are even rooms behind red laser gates sometimes that actually hurt you to cross, so you've got to pay health to get into them. Speaking of hurt, all damage you take from enemies, hazards, and bosses will be half a heart each at first. But once you get to floor 5 and beyond, it'll go up to a full heart of damage for everything. You'll have a list of targets in the hub that you can look at, and the newest one will be selected. The bosses of the first 4 floors will pull from a common pool of minor bosses in a random order. These bosses will also receive a random void power that increases the difficulty of the fight in a second phase. But the 5th floor will be the chosen target boss, which will be much harder, and then that run will be considered a victory if you beat it. But once you beat a couple of these major bosses, it'll start selecting even more powerful ones, and these will get their own floors. So you'll still face a major boss on floor 5, but afterwards you'll go to a safe floor where you can deposit and withdraw various resources, and then you'll head to a new floor 6. And as you get farther into the list of targets, more extra floors will be added, which significantly increases the difficulty, but also allows you to fine-tune your build even more than before due to the extra floors worth of items. One thing this game does very well already is its meta progression. There's a lot of it. When you come back to the hub, you may have completed challenges to redeem. These all unlock something, from new weapons to new relics, new mechanics, and even new characters. There's a huge number of these to unlock, and they add that extra bit of satisfaction after a run where you get to redeem things for doing well and completing interesting actions. This system by itself shows how content-rich the game already is, but there's more. Whenever you end a run, whether a victory or a loss, you get some experience to increase your level. Each level up gives you a skill point, and there are currently 5 skill trees to spend these on. Nodes may do things like adding new room types for you to find, adding new faiths, and even new mechanics as well. Each tree has to be fully completed to get to the next tree, so they're sequential, but each node always costs 1 point. There's also the favor system. Next to the entrance to the abyss, there's a cool-looking statue. Interacting with this will give you a menu of blessings that give you advantages, like starting with armor or starting with a second weapon, and they each take different numbers of these favor points to activate. There will also be curses that make a run harder in all sorts of ways, but give you more favor points to spend on blessings in exchange. This is a fun system due to the variety of good and bad effects you can cook up, but I admit I don't fully understand how it works. It seems the amount of favor you have is fluid, kinda, and changes after a run for some reason that I don't understand, meaning blessings you previously had active will auto-shut off, and you'll suddenly not have the points to use them out of nowhere, even though you just did. It definitely shows off one of the game's biggest issues currently, which is that it just doesn't explain almost anything adequately. The faith system is an interesting new version of the mechanic added to the sequel. You'll start unlocking different faiths, and at the beginning chamber of each floor, there'll be a random mask representing a certain faith that you can pick up. If you do, a faith meter will show up in the bottom right that you want to fill up. Each faith has different actions that fill this meter. The Hatchamon faith is filled by hatching eggs. The weapon crafting faith is filled by absorbing spirits and leveling up your weapon. There's a neat duality faith with 2 meters. One is filled by paying crystals for things, and one is filled by sacrificing health for things. Once this gauge fills up, a temple will spawn on that floor that's unique to each faith. You can teleport to it whenever you'd like, but usually it can't go back once you leave. Also, if you leave the floor without visiting it, it won't follow you to the next floor, so make sure to make use of it. The temples have all sorts of useful rewards in them, themed around the faith. The weapon crafting one will have a free new weapon in it, for instance, as well as some forges that let you do things like turning weapon badges into blanks and then forging them into new badges. The Duality Faith's Crystal Temple gives you a choice between 2 powerful items and locks the other one. And the Blood version of the temple gives you 2 good items that you can choose to sacrifice maximum health to obtain. About the weapon level ups, by the way, this is new. Whenever you break down an unwanted weapon or beat a boss, a bunch of green spirits will spawn for you to absorb. Absorb enough of them and your currently held weapon will level up, increasing its effectiveness. It'll also teleport you to a pocket dimension where you can choose 1 of 2 items related to the weapon. Many of these items are called badges, which add extra effects to your attacks, but they can also be other sorts of relics. These are important to keep up with, as the later floors will have stronger and more healthy enemies, so you'll need the weapon levels to stay competitive. Weapons themselves are often super creative and fun to use, and they're my favorite part of the game so far. I like the fact that each weapon has a learning curve rating in the inventory, which gives you a basic understanding of how hard it is to use effectively. You'll find that basically every weapon has some sort of resource or gimmick that makes it stronger. Like, for instance, the starting assault rifle of the first character. It fires normal shots 4 times, and the 5th shot is a piercing laser. And the more coins you have on you, the more lasers it shoots until it becomes like a long-range laser shotgun. I really like how creative the weapons can be, like the fire blaster that eventually overheats and transforms into a fiery axe that releases shockwaves for a bit, or the cool neon sword that swings fast and releases homing amulets that explode. They went all out with the weapon ideas this time around, giving you a large arsenal of neat weapons with fun gimmicks to combine with your build in a satisfying way. I've really enjoyed my time with Neon Abyss 2 so far, and I expect to continue doing that as they update the game and add more content. I think the foundation they've started with is a very good one, and that the game will evolve into an excellent example of the genre. That being said, it does have flaws, one of which I already mentioned is the game's inability to explain almost anything. Experimenting with mechanics is fun, and it's a good way to learn how it works in theory. But in practice, there are loads of things you can't really experiment your way to getting all that well, and the game would strongly benefit from an in-game encyclopedia of some sort that can be referred to almost like a wiki but not external. The other big issue I have personally is that even though there are loads of items, many of them are too tame and simply rely on doing like a simple task for a simple bonus. That doesn't really help you in combat. You'll get loads of items that speed up eggs, drop coins, provide bombs, conditional stuff like that. But items that actually affect your character or weapon in a major way are much rarer. It can get kind of annoying when the 5th item room in a row is giving me something that just makes crates drop worms I can stomp for coins. The true essence of a game like this is the ability to make yourself overpowered, to make a synergizing build that explodes the whole screen in rainbow bursts of death. But due to the highly conditional and tame items that make up like 60 or 70% of the pool, you won't really find yourself with that winning boss melter build that makes that particular run a total blast. Even though I think there are some serious additions and tweaks that need to be made to the item pool, I still think this game is worth getting currently, as it still provides a very fun and colorful roguelite experience. The guns and badges are interesting and fun enough to help offset the lack of powerful items and provide pretty great moment-to-moment gameplay, even if a better and more effective selection of relics could really take it to the next level. I'd say the price is fair for the current content, and I'm excited to see what future updates bring. I think this can be something pretty special with some more work layered on it. It's even co-op, by the way. If you want to play up to 4-player co-op, you can already do that, so that's pretty cool. I'll put the link to the Steam store page down below so you can peruse it at your leisure. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.